Some of the insurance companies out there are some of the biggest companies are in the world. A lot of very, very talented people working there. What's stopping them doing it in-house? What's stopping them building everything internally?
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of different reasons. Firstly, why they're not doing it at all. And secondly, why they're not doing it in-house. The first one comes down to, I think insurance companies would call this risk. You could also look at it on the opposite side and call it inertia. It's, if you've been in an insurance company for the last 200 years, you've got a way of doing things. And this is the way you do it. This is how you attract new customers. These are the offerings you make to them. The issue there is that the pace of change is exponential. If we look back 40 years, we couldn't have been having this conversation. Frankly, if we look back 10 years, we probably would have been having something very flaky on dial-up. So the pace of change has increased. That means that the consumer has changed. The consumer is no longer my father-in-law happy to get something through the post to say your insurance is renewed. This is now I want to save £5 on my insurance, but I need to understand what I'm getting for it. And to flip that around from the insurance company perspective, it's how can I attract this new breed of customer, which is more flexible, which is more likely to churn. But you only need to understand that's your risk as well, unless you continue to interact with them and offer them new products and new services.
Now, looking at the insurance market and the marketplace, the ecosystem approach, but this time from a technology standpoint, do you think insurers are starting to embrace that approach of, I'm going to work with this data center provider because they can build data centers better than we possibly can. I'm going to work with this KYC organization because they can verify identities. That's all that they do. Do you think that insurers are moving into that kind of attitude?
I think that there's a certain element of, always go with the big people. Your risk there, of course, is that maybe they're not as specialized, maybe they're not as nimble as smaller niche players, but that's fine. Again, this is all about understanding your risk versus your reward. If you go with a big player and you have a particular requirement, can they turn on a sixpence? Sorry, showing my age there, and actually, change the product for you. Every company likes to think themselves as being bespoke. If you're buying effectively off-the-shelf software, you're becoming less and less bespoke every time you buy it.
Insurance is, generally speaking, quite a high-stress time. People call up and go, I've had a car crash. How can they be prepared for delivering a service and they want to knock it out of the park when it comes to customer service and customer delivery. How are they able to do that? What's the approach?
Excellent. So let's go back to actually the purchase, which is obviously the starting point of your interaction with your insurance company. Firstly, it needs to be what you want. It needs to have that value proposition that you can edit, you can change, you can add bits and bobs to it, whatever's the requirement that you have. But as you say, it's absolutely critical when it comes to making a claim against that insurance company. You've had an accident, a loss, some damage, whatever it happens to be, emotions are going to be running high. That's where an insurer with efficient digital channels will really reap the rewards in a couple of ways. Firstly, when you have that initial interaction, you don't want to be judged. You don't want to necessarily someone on the phone saying, oh, that's a shame, that's a bad thing. You just want to think, look, I just want to fill in my details. I want to move on to the next section of this particular journey, whether that needs to be, move my car, replace the window, whatever it happens to be. When you're then in processing that claim, you don't want to speak to somebody. Absolutely. I want to know where my claim is in the claim journey. I don't want to sit and wait for someone to answer the phone to tell me something that they're reading off a screen. Why don't I read that off the screen myself? Having said that, there are particular points in that journey where absolutely, interactive voice systems and indeed in-person systems are going to add richness to the customer journey. It's understanding where they fit and how you can pick up different bits of technology to make the customer's journey, the customer's progress through that journey, better for the customer, easier for the customer, which means, of course, that the customer is more likely to renew with you because they've had a good experience. From an insurer's perspective, managing that customer journey needs to be as inexpensive as possible whilst providing the level of service the customer requires. Again, different insurers may have standard, premium, and super premium policies with different levels of interaction, different levels of data given to the customer. It's important to understand those as well as part of that strategy.
One of my favorite insurers is Flock, because it's kind of taking a step back. It's drone insurance. You've got to look it up. It is phenomenal, but some of the innovation technologies they're playing with there are well, they're pretty phenomenal. How can that approach be used by insurers as a whole?
Well, just listening to you talk, there are a couple of things came straight to mind. Firstly, that it isn't now just about the insurance journey, is it? It's about all the other peripherals around that. And if you look at open banking, which I know we're not talking about banking, where we were talking about, what other partner products can you sell, can you link to? If we look at open finance and open insurance, what other things can I do? Who else can I partner with? Taking this one step further, if we go forward in time to when everyone has an electric car rather than a ICE car, these cars get updates over the air to their steering systems, to their navigation systems. Perhaps that's an opportunity to insure on a per journey basis rather than on an annual basis. Again, exactly as you mentioned there, if I'm going on a 500-mile journey, on motorways, is my risk different from if I'm popping to the shops? Well, I'm sure the risk is different, but having that on the fly ability to say, this journey costs you this journey costs you that, who have you got in the car? All of these little tiny facets of insurance that, again, insurance companies have this massive amount of data already there about everything they've ever been touched with. How do we help insurance companies get access to that information? APIs can enable you to take little bits of data from lots and lots of different sources and tie them all together so that you can get that insurance decision quickly. Again, if we're talking about this hypothetical opportunity of insuring on the fly, well, that needs to be as quick as you like. It can't be, oh, let me think about that, let me call you back. No, I'm just getting in the car now. Tell me how much it's going to cost. Tell me who, if you're not the person who wants to insure me, where else am I going?
I think it's safe to say that insurance companies have a fair bit of data, to put it mildly. How can they use APIs to use this data in a sensible way? Because on one hand, you want to be delivering and making that data as useful as possible for compliance reasons, for AML, for lowering fraud, for improving the customer experience. But there's also a lot of data privacy concerns. So how do you walk that wonderful tightrope?
To start off with, an API is a secure information traffic tool, and also it can enable additional layers of security on top of it to reduce data leakage. With those data protection laws, GDPR, etc., in place in different countries, it's becoming increasingly difficult to manage traffic and data. In an insurance context, as you've said, huge amounts of data, very personally identifiable, massive ecosystem around it. But if you're building that ecosystem around data privacy, using APIs to, in fact, unify those databases automatically, building in layers of security, building in layers of obfuscation, building in layers of encryption, this can actually simplify your governance and at the same time identify any vulnerabilities inherent in those systems.